Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining me for another Alfred Hitchcock Presents review. Today I will be talking about Season 3, Episode 27, Disappearing Trick, starring Robert Horton as Walter Richmond and Betsy von Furstenberg as Laura Guild. If I had to use one word to describe this episode, it would be underwhelming. It's not a terrible Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode, I've seen worse, but Disappearing Trick is pretty average all the way through in my opinion, and then the ending kind of makes it a below average episode and kind of makes the whole thing pointless in my opinion, and I will talk more about that when I get to the end of the episode. So we start with Walter. He's a bookie, and he gets a job from his boss to try and find a man named Herbert Guild. It turns out this guy was a pretty big gambler, a big spender, however you want to say it, but he hasn't placed any bets in a while, and it's Walter's job to investigate and find out what's happened to this man. So, decent enough plot, I suppose. So Walter goes to find Herbert, but when he arrives, he finds a Mrs. Laura Guild. We'll find out her name is later on in the episode, and we find out that Laura's husband basically passed away, or so it seems. We'll find out more about that in a little bit. You can also tell that Walter and Laura are very interested in each other. Either that or they're playing each other pretty well. It's kind of hard to figure out at this point. So Walter finds out more. He finds out that Herbert drowned. It also, finds out that the times he placed his last bets are kind of shaky with the time he supposedly died. So when he also finds out the body was never found, he pays Mrs. Guild another visit. They kiss. You can tell they're more into each other. Laura insists she doesn't have a lot of money. We're not really sure if we should believe her or not. Walter's not sure about this whole thing. He tells Laura basically, I think Herbert might have faked his death to get out of the marriage, but at least to me, there was never really that good of a motivation for Herbert. Laura mentioned she might have cheated in some way, but they never really go into it more, and I just thought the whole thing was kind of shaky at this point, but I guess you just have to kind of go with it. So at this point, we get some more scenes with Laura and Walter. She wants to take a trip. Seems like her and Walter are getting closer. At least that's what we're supposed to think. I was suspicious at this point. So Walter goes to Tijuana, I think it is, to check more on Herbert. He's very convinced that this man is still alive. So eventually Walter surprisingly tracks Herbert down fairly easily, in my opinion. The episode didn't make it seem like he had too much trouble. So at this point, Herbert offers Walter like $10,000 to leave him alone, which I guess was a pretty decent amount of money when this was made. So as Walter's leaving with the money, he seems to accept that. He sees Laura in a car. Turns out she's been up to something. She's been having him followed all weekend. She comes right out and says that she didn't really trust him, which was pretty predictable. She also figures like they'll be able to keep getting money out of Herbert at this point. She says she'll go to see him next time, and I guess she thinks she's got it all planned out. The problem is when Laura and Walter get back to her place, Herbert is there. He basically figured out this whole thing that Walter and Laura were together in a pretty contrived way, in my opinion. Of course, Herbert has a gun. There's a struggle, as is pretty typical for Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Walter gets shot, but it turns out he's okay. But when he's ready to leave the hospital, it turns out Laura is gone. And it seems like his money is gone as well. And that's pretty much it. That's the end. What happened to Laura? What happened to Herbert? We don't really know. I thought this ending was pretty strange and pretty uneventful, honestly, and really doesn't help the episode out too much at all. We go through all that basically just for Laura to leave with the money. Like I said, in my opinion, an underwhelming episode, but it's watchable. There's nothing terrible about Disappearing Trick. So I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5, but this is definitely not an essential episode, and I don't really recommend it, even though it's not terrible. It's watchable. So 2 out of 5 for Disappearing Trick, and as always, thank you very much for watching.